Hey everybody, we have the privilege of being joined by Jessica Cisneros, who is running for Congress in, I don't know all the numbers. What's the
Texas 28.
28, running for Congress. She is certainly a rising star in the Democratic Party and is sort of the bold progressive in this race against longtime Congressman Henry Cuellar, who is probably an understatement to say he's more conservative than you are.
Definitely a gross yes, understatement for sure.
So let's just on that. Well, so thanks for joining
Of
us,
course.
and then we can jump
Happy
in.
to be here.
So for folks who don't know you yet, talk a little bit about your story and why you're running.
Well, I'm running because I strongly believe that my district deserves better. So I was born and raised in Laredo, Texas, which is, um, basically the heart of our district. It's one of those beautifully gerrymandered ones that runs from northeast San Antonio down to Laredo and then down to the Rio Grande Valley. You're talking about a district that's 77% Latinx population. Spanish is the default language down there, where, folks at home, that's the language they speak, my family included. And I grew up in this very cross cultural area of the country. Because of that, I was very inspired to become an immigration attorney and human rights attorney. That's the law that I practice. And the reason why I decided to do that was because growing up, I saw that the laws that were affecting my community weren't created with people like me and my parents and my neighbors in mind. So I've been, wanting to be an advocate. I always thought that that advocacy was going to take the form of me litigating cases in court. But as you can imagine, under the Trump administration, that work became very hard. And as the daughter of Mexican immigrants, it was incredibly heartbreaking just seeing families like mine being torn apart. So I decided to take my advocacy from the courtroom and channel it in this way of me running for Congress because my district is very, very blue. We were talking about a district that went to Hillary Clinton by 20 points in the last presidential election, a district where Beto O'Rourke wiped the floor with Ted Cruz in the last senatorial race as well. Um, we're a safe blue district, and yet we're being represented by one of the most conservative Democrats in Congress who voted with Trump 70% of the time, who voted to fund the wall, who keeps, selling out our community any chance he gets. And there's so many folks like me that are just so frustrated with the lack of leadership that when my community asked me to run, I decided to step up and do it.
Why do you think your community, or the district, keeps reelecting him?
Well, again, you're talking about a deep blue district where the Democrat always wins by 60 to 80% of the vote, sometimes even higher than that. And if you're not, that means that everything's coming down to the primaries. And if you don't have a challenger, it means you're basically guaranteed reelection. And Henry Guad has been leaning into these stereotypes that South Texas is super conservative, and that's why he's voting the way that he's voting. That's why he's, deciding to betray our interests as, constituents back home. But in reality, I mean, any vote that you see where he goes against the interests of our district, there's actually a PAC check, a corporate PAC check tied to it. And because of that, he's been amassing this massive war chest where in a district, I just described it, takes 6 hours to, drive through. It's a lot of ground to cover, very resource intensive. He's been able to, keep a primary challenger away for a very long time. So that what we're doing with our campaign is running a people-powered campaign, a grassroots campaign, and a competitive race, which is very inspiring because we've been able to be very successful in gathering, folks on the ground to volunteer in our efforts there, but also fundraising. We've been able to show that we can be competitive without selling out, our race to the highest bidder.
It's pretty remarkable to me that when did you jump in the race?
June 13th.
Okay, and how much money have you already raised?
Well over $500,000.
Yeah, that's impressive. And you also just got the Emily's List endorsement.
Yes.
Recently. So it doesn't sound like you're just throwing the word competitive around, right? It does seem, especially this early out of your gate, that it is competitive. Are you seeing the energy on the ground?
Yes, definitely. And I mean, again, this is a race that people have been waiting for 13 years. And it's pretty exciting to just see our community come together and, decide to take a leap of faith along with our team and that we truly believe that we deserve better because, I mean, to the point where we haven't even had town halls in a very long time back home, right? That's how entitled this person feels to that seat. And that's what people don't want. People actually want access to their congressperson, that they feel that they can approach them and, you know, feel heard. There's areas in our community where, you know, they haven't been visited by someone running for Congress in such a long time. I've been able to get votes that way, where I just appear on people's front steps and they're like, they appreciate the effort that I'm making to try to bring them into these conversations that we've been left out of for so long.
On jobs, on the economy, what is sort of your worldview of economic policy, not just for Texas but for the U.S.? What kind of mindset would you bring to Congress when it comes to economics and job growth?
So for us and this campaign is that this campaign is about bringing the respect and dignity to the worker, because, you know, look, for one example of issues that are super important in our community, in our district, trade, right? We're talking about, you know, for example, Laredo being the number one land port in the nation, and you're having talks about revisiting NAFTA and the USMCA, right? A concerning thing is that there's people like my father who's been a truck driver for 30 years, and until I asked him, like, hey Dad, did you know NAFTA was being revisited? He was like, I had no idea this was happening, right? And when I first had that conversation with my dad, I was like, okay, let me talk to other truck drivers in the community. Let me talk to supply chain managers, to warehouse workers. Let's see what's going on. What are people, you know, hearing? A concerning number of people didn't even know that this was happening. And to us, it's like, you know, we're the ones that are at the front lines. Those are the people that are going to be directly affected by any trade negotiation. And yet they don't have a seat at the table. They're not brought into this conversation. So it's things like that, making sure that we're investing in our community, making sure that we're creating jobs by investing in our infrastructure, which again, if you were to ask Henry Cuellar, like, you know, Laredo's a success story. But yes, there's a lot of wealth being created, but it's not people like my dad that are seeing, you know, the benefits of the wealth that's being created down there. It's not the worker. So for us, it's obviously encouraging and investing and boosting our economy, but making sure that you're reaching out to the folks that are going to be directly impacted by those policies.
And that makes sense as to why Elizabeth Warren, running for president, has endorsed you.
Yes.
Right. Continuing on some differences with Representative Cuellar, what are some other couple big ticket items that really you guys, I mean, healthcare is one.
Mm-hmm.
He's for the Affordable Care Act, you're for Medicare for All. On choice, on other issues, what are some really stark contrasts?
I think something that's at the forefront of many people in our district is where we are on the immigration issues. One of the most upsetting votes that Congressman Cuellar has had or has you know, voted on is voting to fund the wall. And you're talking about a district where it's right on the border. It's you're talking about constituents getting their lands taken away, lands that they have lived on for 6 generations with their families. And they feel very betrayed, right? Also because this is a district where it's right on the border. We should be the ones championing and making sure that we're the ones that are telling the rest of the nation, like, these are the problems that we're seeing at our border, but these are also the solutions, because we're right there. We know what they are. But we don't have that leadership. The fact that he's also the top Democrat congressional recipient of money from private prisons is very upsetting for folks back home, because again, you're talking about a district that's 77% Latinx population. Like, it's people like us that are there in those detention centers. So there are those issues, the fact that he's anti-choice, the fact that he has an A rating from the NRA. There's just the fact that he's, you know, anti-worker. There's just so many issues to go after him on that, you know, I think fortunately and unfortunately, we're having a tough time trying to figure out, you know, what issues we're going to be focusing on, because there's just so much to go after.
Well, that should be a good campaign then. Final question. You are are you touring around the state? Mm-hmm. And what are you seeing and hearing from folks in other cities are they glad you're running? Are they meeting with you? Are you raising money?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's just so much excitement about this campaign for so many reasons. I mean, one of them just I think one of the most revolutionary things about our campaign is that, yes, I am a young woman of color running from the border, but I'm also a working class person, right? And we're showing that we can run a competitive race that is people powered, people focused, that we're not taking any corporate PAC money. And we're taking on this entrenched incumbent of 15 years, and that we're showing that it's possible, that we can run a competitive race. I was very inspired by the victories of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Congresswoman Presley. And I hope that, the next congressional cycle, there's more people like us running, right? Because I hope to show them that if you can do it in South Texas, you can do it anywhere across the nation.
I hope you come back.
I definitely will.
Thanks.
Invite me.
Will do. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.